And then, even though it began as something where I'm smoking once, twice a week, maybe.
Can I interrupt you for a second? When you say that it made you a little bit more soft, and we're not talking about ED here.
Yeah.
About how long from when you started smoking?
Did I notice that
change?
change?
Like how long did that take? Couple months, couple weeks?
Immediately. Immediately.
Like while you were high or post calm down?
Literally, once it kicks in, and it's not a feeling of being out of control. Now, granted, you can definitely smoke too much. And I think this is also a distinction to make that, let me finish. Let's go down this route further. That's the thing about something like flowers. It kicks in very quickly, and it can take a while to build up a tolerance, or it usually takes a much different use pattern for the effects to change. Now, granted, that also has a lot to do with the type of flower you're smoking, just like people respond differently to whiskey than they might to vodka. The flower I was getting, the first strain I ever smoked was Kim Dong 13. And one of my homeboys, he put me on game, but he had some real quality stuff. And it also matters greatly the quality of what you're smoking, because, for instance, if somebody, or using in general, doesn't have to be smoking, but just using, if somebody is to use a lower quality, just like if you drink really cheap liquor, it can almost be guaranteed to give you a mean hangover versus something that's more quality that, as long as you're hydrated, you'll be perfectly fine. Similar thing with flower. If you're using low grade, Reggie or bunk, as they say, it can have more negative, overtly negative physiological, psychological impact. And the thing to keep in mind as well with the flower is that the flower we see today, it's like mutant in comparison to the, sin semilla of decades before. So all the stuff in Narcos that they were selling, that was sin semilla, and it was flower, but it was far, far less potent because it was still in a more natural form. Whereas today, people are sitting in labs being paid millions and millions of dollars to literally make the strongest shit possible. And that, in my opinion, is not really optimal.
When you say the strongest shit, you're talking about the highest THC?
Yes.
Like density-wise?
Just so yeah, you could say that, but basically if you were to measure it by micromole, it has a higher concentration of active THC or any active cannabinoid, but typically when you're looking at flower, especially these days, because the CBG, the CBNs are still not really popular yet, you have primarily THC flower, which is what most people think of when they think of weed, and then you have CBD, and CBD is marijuana. It is the same exact fucking plant. The only difference is the CBD variants, they are genetically bred to remove all of the THC basically and get it below that 0.03 delta 9 THC requirement, which is what the hemp law passed. And it's designed to crank the concentration of CBD. But when most people think about gas and smoking weed, Wiz Khalifa, he ain't looking for CBD. They are looking for strong, heavy THC dominant strains. And what I found in the past, and a lot of people I interacted with, they began to associate good flower with the flower that is the absolute strongest. But I think from a medicinal standpoint, that's very flawed in the approach. Because what people should be doing, just like with any solution that somebody is seeking for their health, their well-being, their body, whatever, you need to look for what is going to give you the results you're looking for. So you have certain flowers that are really good for creativity. You have certain flower.
Does that fall on strain type? Like the split?
So it's
that indica and sativa?
It's more about
the
cohort effect that takes place with the different cannabinoids, the different flavonoids, the different terpenoids in the flower, and the strain is going to have a lineage of carrying a certain dominance of those flowers versus others. So something like a lemon haze, right? The reason they throw that name in there, typically you ever hear any flavor or scent, is because it has a certain ratio of those different properties, those molecules, that maybe it's a lemon-based terpenoid, which typically is what gives the flavor or the aroma. Whereas the cannabinoids are what are usually going to have the physiological or the psychological, psychoactive properties contained within it. That's why certain strains can be more likely to trigger creativity, and some strains are more likely, in some people, to trigger anxiety, perhaps. But it still comes down to somebody really knowing what they can and what they can't handle. And we, as a whole, live in a culture that's very overindulgent. So sometimes, whether
everyone
peer
likes
pressure,
to binge.
you know what I'm saying? So it's like, and I found myself in this period for a while where instead of where it went from where I may have been smoking once or twice a week, I was now smoking once or twice a day. And at that point, you know, it becomes that ritual that I found myself in of kicking it with my homies. And, you know, we roll up a blunt. So guess what? We finishing the blunt.
Yeah.
Where maybe I should have been good after one or two hits. I think it's similar with alcohol where some people are just like, shots, shots, shots. You know, and it's like after the first shot, you probably would have been good and had like a great evening. It did what you wanted it to do. It's not fucking punishing your liver.
Yeah, you could sit on a couple beers, a couple drinks, and a couple shots and be fine and coast.
Good.
You can coast till 5 o'clock in the morning and be fine and not wake up the next day.
You could drive home safely.
Yeah.
You know, but it's all about the way in which it's used. And so to the point of what you kind of mentioned earlier about this idea that because it's from the ground, it's good for you. Well, so is cocaine, you know, in its purest form with the coca leaf.
I mean,
you know,
poppy
opium
also grows in the ground too.
You see what I'm saying? So, but nobody's running out to do opium too much. Once again, it's about the ratio. Narcotics.
Salvia grows in the ground too.
You see what I'm saying? So I think we must be careful about that because
I think it's a broad stroke that I think that
it's a justification.
people that are pro pot throw that out there like everything that grows in the ground is great.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.